The stories, the news, in-depth analysis of national current affairs. Freshly pressed.
That was my 6-7.
And a good morning to you once more, Lagos. You're tuned in and listening to Smooth Breakfast on Smooth 98.1. It's with Valentine and myself, indeed. In the studio with us this morning for a terrific Thursday to join in newspaper analysis inside of Freshly Pressed, which is right now. We have our usual Thursday analysts. We've got Funmi Odude. Good morning, Funmi. How are you?
Good morning, Folu. Nice to have you back.
Thank you very much. Nice to be back. We also have Miss Ireti Bakare Yusuf. Good morning, Miss Ireti.
I love the hair.
Thank you very much. And we've got Ugo Dre as well in the studio. Good morning, Ugo.
Morning, I love the
Right, we'll take it all. We'll take it all. Find our analysts also up on Twitter. Ugo Dre is at Ugo Dre. Very simply, Miss Ireti Bakare Yusuf, you can find her as at Sisioge Lagos, and you can find Funmi Odude of the exact same name up on Twitter at Funmi Odude. We are streaming live on our YouTube platform, so make sure you're following us up there. And while you're following us and commenting on the live stream, also remember that you can send in your comments to our WhatsApp number. It is 0809 444 981. And while you're tweeting, make sure you use the hashtag FreshlyPressed981.
We'll start with our first stories from Guardian newspaper. Federal government plans entrenchment of Freedom of Information Act, moves to train judges, public officials. And this has been long coming. It's something we've been clamoring for public institutions to reveal certain details or information to the public for assessment and viewing. Now, it seems like they've resolved to provide insight and enlighten stakeholders on the application of the Freedom of Information Act, and the federal government has concluded plans to commence training for judicial and public officials. Give us some insight for me.
Okay, so the Freedom of Information Act actually got a bit of victory this year.
Mm-hmm.
There had always been challenges from state governments claiming that the act applies only to the federal level. Without domestication by the state, it shouldn't apply to them. And we've had in Lagos State make such arguments, Lagos State, and a High Court in Ondo State had actually held that indeed the Freedom of Information Act applies only to the federal level. The man who had taken the case to court, Mr. Martin Zaloff, he's a journalist and project coordinator of an NGO, Offline Resources. He had requested from the Ondo State government expenditures from 2012 to 2014, and it was rejected. He appealed against that judgment, and sometime in March this year, the Court of Appeal held that the Freedom of Information Act applies to all levels of government, federal, state, and local government. So that is a huge victory for the act. And this next step taken by the ministry in terms of training public officials is another step in the right direction.
What's the relevance of the training?
The relevance of the training is we get this attitude from public officials, like maybe because we've been in military regime for so long, we get this attitude of superiority. We get this attitude of
We don't
can't
owe you,
touch me. We don't owe you any
explanation,
any responsibility. So that training is actually very important to teach them that this is a duty, a legally enforceable duty that they have to provide.
Perhaps a clearer serve the public. You're a public servant and not just some Oga in some office.
Oga at the top.
Who's going to remind them of that? They go to Harvard, they go to who's VAD, they go to everybody VAD. They don't.
This time around, they're not going anywhere.
What I'm saying is, we don't see the results, the offshoot of that training, yet we keep investing in them. That's my point.
This is a very necessary training. It's part of, if you take it from the angle of, just to give an example, just the same way you hold town hall meetings before you implement a policy, you should let everyone know how this is important in the scheme of things, how it should be applied, and really
I'm not disagreeing with you that training is important.
Go ahead. They don't flout certain guidelines. Ugo?
I'm just wondering how this got into the news, though.
It's not newsworthy.
Yeah. How do you just report to the news that you're going on training?
Because I feel it's.
I mean, that's routine.
It's not, but it's
somebody must have issued this as a press release, so there must be a reason why it's in the news.
You've been asking questions about this. Certain information is not available online. That's
No, I'm talking about even the fact that the news that you're going to train judges and public officials on FOI. How did it get into the news?
Well, I don't know
Is
how
that
you're going to do
newsworthy?
it, but I do have a problem with the training of the judges part. I find public officials doing this a lot. AMCON does it, EFCC does it. Train judges on the interpretation of a law that they have the right to interpret.
Exactly
And
my
it is-
point.
The public officials usually do this training slanted towards
Business.
them. Like, we train, if AMCON is going to train judges, they're going to train judges on
Yes,
in a
yes,
manner
and
that
business,
benefits
in, yeah,
them,
in
as
business
opposed
law.
to
Yes,
as
in
opposed
business
to
law.
the other
Yes,
guy.
yes.
I find it ridiculous that the executive would train the judiciary on how to interpret the law. I mean, if it was the National Assembly, which even isn't right, I would say maybe they want to explain what they drafted. But the executive should not be training the judiciary on how to interpret the law that National Assembly made.
I totally agree with Ugo. I don't know why this is newsworthy,
Well, thank you very
because it
much.
should be regular.
These are necessary questions we should ask, really, about these things. Now, Premium Times newspaper is next. Remember, you can send your messages to WhatsApp. The number has been tweeted on our Twitter handle at Smooth981FM Lagos. Premium Times newspaper has this headline: Plateau killings. What we discussed with Buhari, Saraki, Dogara. Now, the Senate President and the Speaker of the House of Representatives actually went to meet the President yesterday, and the National Assembly met with Mr. Buhari on Wednesday at his official residence before the President went to attend a meeting with the Federal Executive Council. Among things they discussed, what topped the agenda was the crisis in Plateau State and how many lives were lost, and try and take measures, concerted efforts to see how they can reorganize security apparatus in the country. And they said, clearly stated, according to the Senate President in his speech that he granted after that meeting, that they do not want a replication of this across the country. What's your take, Ms. Ireti?
Well, look, my condolences, because I haven't been on air since it happened.
Yes.
And so my deepest...
Happened on Sunday evening.
Yes, my deepest sincere condolence. I mean, I think Monday must have been one of the darkest days in Lagos, Nigeria, overall, you know. So yes, so this is important. I mean, this picture was all over, right? You
Yes,
saw
it
this
was.
picture all over social media yesterday.
Gruesome.
No, the Dogara,
okay, Dogara.
Saraki video,
Meeting,
and then the curious one was posted by Malara Wood on Twitter, where in the shadow, in the mirror, you know, Michael Jackson mirror, as we were saying downstairs, you saw Bakare kind of, you know, when somebody's hiding in the corner. Yeah, you could see him in the mirror. It was like,
Shadowing them.
yes, you're thinking, okay, what's going on there? It was really, I'll show you. I'll show you. So this is interesting. So Dogara, they said, look, I liked a lot of the things that Dogara said. He said, look, we can no longer tolerate this kind of situation as a government. Whatever it is, we must not lose the fight against violence, because we can't lose that fight and still keep our civilization. Sir, absolutely. What we also mustn't do, or what you mustn't do, is to forget that it is your responsibility to keep us safe. I continue. He went on to say, look, he talked about Boko Haram and said everything resembling progress, from schools to hospitals to government institutions, everything has been pulled down, and we don't want a replication of this all over the country. No, sir, we don't. Again, you and your colleagues, we throw it back at you. He goes on and he says, these are matters that you cannot... So he said that we've had discussions with Buhari, with the president, that he talked about the things that he was putting in place. He said, but they can't discuss it in public because they're matters of security issues, which we don't expect them to discuss. He quotes, he says, these are not matters that you can discuss, but he has told us what he is doing, the reorganization that he plans to put in place to ensure that this doesn't happen again. Now, finally, it is something, this is Dogara still speaking, it is something each and every one of us must invest in, whether as traditional rulers, as community leaders, councillors, chairmen, all stratas of society must invest in peace building. That is the only way we can live in a secure community and ensure that we progress. Very quickly, all of these are wonderful, aren't they? They're really good rhetorics, and we know that, you know, they have speech writers who write these things for them very quickly.
Yeah, but before it's thrown out as just a cavalier speech, I would say that is one part of the most important statements that he made there. At the last line you just read, relating to councillors, community leaders, because this is an internal problem. If you have over 100 masked men fomenting that kind of terror or causing that kind of damage in a town, that you have locals that are privy to every nook and cranny and activities that are going on, shouldn't there be better cooperation between that part of that strata of society and security apparatus.
I don't
personnel.
disagree. I'm not disagreeing with anything he says. I'm just saying to you, their rhetoric, their mantras, we've heard them a million times over and over again. I know speechwriters who write for these people. Are they talking from their heart? I doubt it. I absolutely doubt
But
it.
I
So
think
I'm
they do,
no,
because it comes from a
actually,
place of
you
concern.
think I disagree with your thinking in this
Okay,
case,
wow.
because I think if you care enough, you would not continue to let these things happen. That's number one.
Yep.
Okay, it's about action. I don't want treachery.
So what
I'm
should
sick.
they do differently?
Allow me. What you need to do differently is you promised us. For once, I am really, 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 really furious with Buhari. The one thing you promised us was security. The one thing that I cannot. You were doing it well with Boko Haram, but now you have totally failed. And if you fail Plateau, you fail my brother. If you fail where you fail my sister. So no, sorry, they're not speaking from the heart. These people need to do better. No, forget that. They need to be out.
Thank you for that passionate analysis. We'll move on now very quickly to Punch. Federal government faults reports on Nigeria's poverty level. Minister of Trade and Investments, Okechukwu Enelama, on Wednesday said that the recent Brookings reports that rated Nigeria as the new global headquarters of poverty, outstepping India on that one, was not the true situation of things. He said the report might have been drawn up during the time of recession. That's precisely before June of 2017. Is that assertion right?
Well, it's possible because reports, when they do these reports, they take a long time before they come out, because imagine the amount of data they have to collect and analyze. And if a report is done properly, this sort of report, it should actually take a year, 12 months. So it doesn't surprise me. It's just that unfortunately the report has come out as a time where, again, as Nigerians, we are not only bleeding, we are hungry. Okay, things are not good. I mean, it's come out in the worst week ever, really. This is a week where, the pain, how do you say in Brooklyn, reach past. It's just deep, and the soul keeps getting deeper and deeper. But he does go on to say, and this is what's his name, the Minister of Trade and Investment, Chukwu Enalama. And he's a very, very smart guy. So it's not like I can dismiss what he's saying. He's not one of the, ones in the house.
Especially laying the scale against, showing how this inflation index, probably this statistics was drawn up based on, rating population growth against, in spite of recession, against the supply of goods and services.
Absolutely. I mean, this is a guy that comes from private sector, so he does know a lot of what he's talking about. I look up to him anyway, So
I actually read that article.
Yeah.
It was actually an estimate.
Exactly.
So you got to be very careful with the way the
report it
as well, and the kind of things you read on social media. I actually read it. Estimate that, at certain time Nigeria would overtake India.
So it's not exactly true.
It's not now. It's not now.
It's not factual.
And it's the headline. You have to understand that media, even in the UK,
So
even in the US, that's what they do. They will put the most shocking headline to get you to
But the
read
bottom
story.
line is that, look, I don't think it's not even the headline. It's not even the fact that they're saying we're overtaking India. All those things are just mere rhetoric, like you say. The issue is that the state of poverty in Nigeria is unacceptable.
It is unacceptable.
The recession
Totally.
made it worse.
Yeah.
We don't need anybody telling you.
To
You don't
tell
need
us
foreigners
that.
to tell you. Look around you. You know that the
Every
state of
traffic
poverty in
light.
Nigeria is deep,
Yeah.
and we need to get out. So there's no point defending this in any way. A lot of Nigerians are poor, and the government needs to do better to get us out of poverty.
No,
That's
but I
all.
don't think he's necessarily defending it. What he's doing is he's stating the fact that, look, so here's some of the things he said. Somebody may have written a report when we were in recession. Remember that if you're in a recession, what it means is that though your
Yes, a lot
population
of
is great,
Nigerians
allow
have
me
been
to
in
finish.
recession
No.
for
I'm not disagreeing with you. What I'm saying is that Minister Nalama is not, I don't think he's making an excuse. He's saying that they are working on infrastructure in Nigeria, and it's a collective
That sounds
effort.
like an excuse to me.
No,
Like,
it doesn't.
sounds like
Actually,
damage
it's
control.
sometimes-
it's a clarification
Some-
because
yeah,
we've just
sometimes
sat
it's a
down here
fact.
and pointed out that we've got a lot of sensationalist headlines.
Thank
now
you.
we know that people have carried the story and said as a result conclusively
Thank you.
that we are now the nation's poorest, well, the world's poorest nation, and that's not true.
And that's not
so
true.
it's a clarification. That's
But
all.
I think even
guys,
him-
here's my point. All I'm saying is, it's wrong. I already said it. It's that wasn't actually what that report said. But the bottom line is that a lot of Nigerians are poor.
Yeah, but
So
the bottom line is a lot of the world are poor.
there's no
Actually,
point
the majority of the
arguing
world
over
is
the
poor.
headline or whatever. Nigerians are poor, and we need to do better. That's all.
But the majority of the world is poor, and we do need to do better as humans. So this is not just a Nigeria problem. Can we please get away from that?
All right, we've got messages to read out as well. This is in from MI from Akoka, who says the Freedom of Information Act for the culture. How can a government parastatal claim that financial disclosure of public funds could lead to a security breach? If I'm paying taxes, then it's my right to follow the money. I hope the quote-unquote training makes them less opaque, he says. All right, thank you very much, Emma. We've got Henry Manuel, who's just sent in a message on WhatsApp saying that the data used by the World Data Lab for the global poverty figures was gleaned from the World Bank Group's 2018 outlook. So data analysis was done and compiled between February and April of 2018, and this information is in their website. But the Minister of Trade and Investment suggested that the data must have been collected during the recession. Obviously, our dear minister or his advisors haven't read the report in detail, says Henry Manuel. Very interesting. While Rosa sends in a message, because he's very eager to talk about this from downstairs, says the estimate from the reports were not done during the recession. They're produced in October and April. So it is from April. Minister Enelama should not have spoken, says Rosa's AK Trevor Noah's lapel pin. And, and we've got a Rainmaker who says, I do agree with Mr. Ireti. It's the rhetoric. How many times have Saraki and Dogara met with the president in his office after this kind of incident? I've lost count. They've come up with a nonsense outcome of stating that they can't divulge the details because of security issue. That's all they keep saying. And now, how has that helped us? These people are just showmen. Now, if it's not, something ought to have been done then. Guys, we all need each other to live peacefully.
So we'll move on to ThisDay newspaper. If we recall, in March this year, the the Federation Accounts Allocation Committee reached a stalemate over the allegations that NNPC withheld portions of the Federation accounts that are supposed to be sent back to the Federation account. Now, the governors of 36 states of the Federation and their state attorney generals and commissioners for justice met last night in Abuja to agree on the way forward on the implementation of the proposed new minimum wage. Can you give us some insight, Ugo Dre?
Yeah, so the government is proposing 58,000 as a new minimum wage. Everybody sort of wants an increase in their salaries, right? So, but the elephant in the room is, how do you actually pay for this, right? How do you pay for it? So you want to increase minimum wage from 18,000 to 58,000. That has obvious implications for the economy. One, it's probably going to provide the kind of stimulant we need to actually grow the economy, but at the same time, someone has got to pay for that minimum wage. And as we are today, Valentine, we can't actually afford to increase minimum wage. That's just the fact, because we can't pay for it. A lot of states are currently struggling to pay for minimum wage at 18,000 naira. So how do they expect to pay for minimum wage at 58,000 naira? So what the government needs to actually tell Nigerians is, how do you intend to grow your revenue from the 10 or 11 trillion that we currently have as a country to maybe 15, 16, 17 trillion, so that you can actually pay minimum wage. Also, the civil service as we have it today, isn't it bloated? Why don't you start by cutting, reducing the workforce in the civil service, and then from there, the savings that you make, you can now start to increase the minimum wage. So this argument is just going to go on and on and on. And remember, we're in a political season. So the government wants to push this through, because you also want...
But from the story, they're saying that because the reason why they're facing these problems, really in paying the minimum wage or meeting the demands, is because the fuel subsidy payments have not been remitted by the NNPC back to the Federation account.
Even if it is, can you afford the minimum wage? That's the point. You can't, Valentine.
All right. On that note, let's keep it moving because we are running out of time. Up next, estimated billing, your fraudsters. That's what the reps are accusing the discos of. Fully members of the House of Reps on Wednesday were talking again in a public hearing. They're still addressing the fact that there's estimated billing, and they're full-handedly now just calling the discos thieves, more or less. What are your thoughts on this?
I think on this one, Nigerians would agree with their representative. So this is coming on the background of Fed news that Jamia has been going back and forth, but I don't think it should be that difficult to do, particularly when you look at the Ministry of Power's recent regulatory framework to license meter asset providers. That it would take the burden away from the discos. And I heard Mr. Gajabemila explaining once, really comparing it to services provided by the telecoms, and then he says they don't provide the phones. You get your phones, and then they provide the services, which is similar to what the regulatory framework should do. So if that is implemented, I don't see that much argument that the discos would have. The challenge, though, is we all know it's almost like an open secret in Nigeria that the whole thing was done shabbily, and they have a problem meeting profits, and that is the reason they prefer estimated billings. But then Nigerians should not be the ones that would take the brunt of bad decisions and lack of proper.
Any commentary as to the time that it may take to implement this? Because whether or not we should continue billing, it does exist now, which would therefore mean that if we're going to criminalize it, we have to cut off everybody that doesn't have a meter and then just wait. So what does that do for the nation in the meantime?
Mr. Gajabemila has said that it might not be a law that will take effect immediately, and the date will be put on the law to when it takes effect. And then they should look at it in relation to when these regulations for the meter providers would kick in.
I think lawmakers need to be better educated on all of this, though. For us to attain kind of metering that you want in Nigeria, you probably need about $1 billion. Now, do you have $1 billion in the power sector today?
Do not.
And the lawmakers also have to watch their rhetoric. From what I read, you can see angry lawmakers calling for fraudsters. Come on. So you can't be writing law of this kind of mindset.
Well, Ugo Dre, that then takes me very nicely to this next story. I want to ask you about this one from the New Telegraph, actually, where the CBN disburses about 158.7 billion naira to discos, GENCOs, and so on and so forth. Since talking about how much money actually exists within the power sector, do you want to take us through this story, essentially, what it means?
Yeah, so this is basically what has happened in the past. So if you recall, there's a time that the government, through the CBN Power Intervention Fund, gave out money to the GENCOs and the discos. So this is the CBN governor basically breaking down the amount they've given over the last 3 years or so. And this is all part of the hearing for the power sector. So just to give you a flashback, basically the CBN intervened because this was a time when a lot of the power sector participants complained that they had a lot of under recoveries, so they couldn't recover because of the tariffs. So the CBN now came in and said, okay, we'll provide you a form of subsidy upfront when and then you repay as they increase tariffs. So this is basically what this is. It's nothing new for you. It's just the CBN governor basically saying that, look, we've given them as much as 858 billion naira over the last 3 years, and most of this money actually went to the generating companies and of course the distribution companies that haven't actually priced their power correctly.
Indeed, they really haven't. All right, but let's then talk about better power supply, which beckons as thermal stations connect to new gas pipelines. From ThisDay newspaper, told by the NNPC, the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, on Wednesday, actually declared that all existing gas power based power generation plants in Nigeria have been connected to permanent gas supply lines through a 600-kilometer new gas pipelines. Now, this was coming in from the Group Managing Director, Dr. Mike Baru, and he stated this at a conference in the United States, but has not yet clarified if the gas supply is permanent and stable.
Okay, this is good. So generating companies have always complained about what you call stranded power. That
Yes.
They can generate power, but they can't wield that power, right? So they can't send that power out to the transmission, to the grid.
Yes.
So if you have, gas pipelines connected to the grid, that also reduces that cost as well. But probably also reduces that cost of generating power, which has always been a problem. So, but then in terms of translating to better power supply, that's a different thing entirely. Because currently we have, I think, 8,000 megawatts or so installed generating capacity in Nigeria.
Yes.
And we can only yield about 5,000. So the transmission company has to actually increase their ability to wield that power. And then the schools, of course, must have the network to actually absorb that power as well. So it's a different thing entirely. Remember, it's the value chain of gas of generation, transmission, and distribution. So it's important that the transmission is also ramping up their own capacity. And if you look at the recently passed budget, I think the government provided for 50 billion there about for transmission upgrades and all that. So everything has to come into play for us to see the kind of power, steady power supply that we want in the country.
Again, so once more, we're still just talking in potential, and we don't know when the
It's all
actualization.
potential.
Because that's the
It's
summary
all
of this.
potential. I mean, I don't see anything happening different this year. Probably give it another 5 years.
Reality.
All right, that's tough stuff, but that's the reality in Nigeria, I guess. We're a nation of potential. Let's move on now. Speaking of potential, the court orders interim forfeiture of Allison-Madueke's 325 million naira Lekki land to the federal government. This is according to the Federal High Court in Lagos that was presided over by Justice Bab Kwewumi, I hope I said that right, on Wednesday, ordered the temporary forfeiture of this land belonging to the former Minister of Petroleum Resources. It's quite a hefty amount there. For me, your comments on this?
Personally, I think the woman had a personal ambition to upstage Abacha.
To just own everything
But I don't know that she's saving like Abacha. Because Abacha saved for us.
in the world.
She happened to, and then she did one nice thing. She spent a lot of it in Nigeria, so it's easy for us to recover like this. We don't have to start
To go too far
to go
outside
too
the
far
borders.
outside so this is another. I mean, when will this stop? I'm not sure. I'm not sure when, but
But no conviction yet.
I think Abacha's hasn't stopped. How can you expect hers to?
Not just the revelations, at least.
It's
Like,
never. It's. I don't think
don't
we're
know.
gonna know the depth of
I
what
don't know.
Dizani took for at least another decade.
Yeah. And another part of the story that I'd like to highlight on. So, apart from those in government, another group of people that seem to have been caught in this our anti-corruption sweep are very senior lawyers. So we have in this case as well that one of the defendants is a senior advocate of Nigeria whose office was searched, a lot of documents recovered, and
Mr. Mamgo.
yes, so I guess it's not just the public.
Oh God!
institutions
If
that
I
are
start
being-
now, they'll say Miserity
So,
saying.
so a couple of questions then. First of all, so what's the implication of this interim? Because it is an interim order of forfeiture.
yes,
So if you could
yes.
explain that for our journalists
Okay,
in public.
so,
And the second, what will the NJC do about the number of high-level SANs really that are being implicated?
Well, at least the SAN that was convicted this year, his silk has been revoked,
Okay.
And is that it?
Well, he was convicted.
Yeah. So okay, he's in jail, or have they just taken
Was
that
in
rope
jail.
from him?
It was the sentence was just I think a month or 2 months. So
And
he
you see,
spent
this
it-
is the
he spent-
disgrace. How is
he
that a
spent
deterrent?
is whatever in jail.
How is
But-
that a deterrent?
But in terms of it being an ex parte order, so EFCC under their act have the powers to go to court without notifying the owners of the property.
Yeah.
With if they have sufficient evidence that it was bought or purchased from proceeds of crime or proceeds of illegality, and then they would temporarily attach it, giving room for whoever is in possession or whoever claims to have ownership of the properties to come and explain why the property should not be permanently attached to the federal government. So that's what the interim order is, and that's why they were ordered to publish it in the newspaper. So if you have proof that this property is yours and it was obtained legally,
You can come
you
challenge.
could come challenge the interim order. But then with all that we have seen of these Yanis properties, it's very unlikely to
It's going to stay
happen.
silent. Thank you for that, Funmi. As we move on very swiftly to our final story in from the New Telegraph, Customs are lamenting that 70% of port transactions are not compliant. So the Nigerian Customs Service have said that 70% of the imports and exports at the seaports are not compliant to trade rules. They're saying it's affecting trade facilitation, and they're just really quite upset. Mr. Ireti, your thoughts on this?
Go on, say very quickly. I've gotten used to that now. Well, the stories, I mean, the headline, I think, totally says it. What he's basically lamenting that, look, a lot of their customers, if you like, they don't comply. That if they comply to the rules, half of the problems they have at the port wouldn't happen. He actually said, if you check it, that we only have 30% out of 100 who would comply. And that's really quite shocking. They have electronic systems. He says we have all the or the other rules, etc., in place, but they don't comply. Now, what concerns you when you read this thing is we keep going on about, the government. I always say this, the government, Nigeria. No, at the time, it stops being the government. It starts being us as a people. It also then starts being where we can blame the government is we have foreign companies who come into our ports who actually misbehave in a way that they wouldn't do in their country or other parts of the world. That is something we've allowed to happen. And I dare say, not that I'm attacking the controller, I dare say if we take a microscope at the controller himself, waiting we go find.
And there you have it. On that note, we've pretty much come to the end of Freshly Pressed for this morning. I want to thank our analysts. Thank you very much, Folu Odude, Miss Ireti, Bakare, Yusuf at Sissiogi Lagos, and Ugo Dre of Nairametrics at Ugo Dre, very simply. Unfortunately, we couldn't read out all your messages for time reasons, but we got through as many as we possibly could. Coming up next, we're switching lanes, going from newspaper analysis into entertainment news discussions inside of the Grapevine at 8:15. So keep listening to Smooth Breakfast right here on Smooth 98.1.
The headlines.
Now I've gotten used to the whole
The
very quick in 10 seconds. So I was getting myself ready.
Analysis of national current
Bang.
affairs.